Hello and welcome to the Rita Ellen Merchandani Show. I am so excited to have you here today with a very, very, very special guest, someone who is not only a good friend, but someone who inspires me with the way that she lives her life. We have with us today Sabrina Palazzo, who is a wellness entrepreneur, spiritual mentor that is based out of Boston. Her brand, Source Method, offers spiritual coaching, breathwork, and meditation experiences with the overarching goal to reconnect you to you. Source Method is for dreamers, high achievers, and those on a quest to step into their authentic power in life in all aspects of it. Whether you're a wellness enthusiast, soul seeker, CEO, entrepreneur, or dreamer, there is something for everyone under the Source Method brand name. I wanted to include all of that because it was just so amazing, and I feel like it does a really good job of just touching the surface of some of who you are. So Sabrina, I'm so glad you're here today. Welcome.
Oh, thank you, Rita. I'm so happy. I feel like this is a natural next step for us to be on this podcast. Me and you have had such a beautiful journey too. So I'm just really excited for this. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for coming. And for everyone listening, I know we're going to have such a magical journey today. And I really want to start at the beginning. So, Sabrina, I would love to hear a little bit about how all of this started for you, your spiritual journey, Source Method, breath work, all of it. So wherever you want to start on your journey.
Yeah. So, before my journey really began in 2020. However, I don't give myself enough credit. Before 2020, I really was spiritual without knowing what that even meant. My mom was very spiritual also without knowing what that really meant. And I kind of grew up just feeling very connected to everything, feeling like there was a lot of things unseen happening behind the scenes. But it really wasn't until 2020 when I experienced a lot of loss that my world shattered and I was forced to pick up the pieces after that. And those pieces included the more spiritual parts of me and really activating those. So 2020, it was in the spring where I actually, March 21st, I lost my father-in-law to cancer. And then exactly 1 month later to the date, April 21st, I lost my dad to cancer. And so that was obviously when you lose one person, that's really challenging. When you lose two people you really love, I actually got married in between. So it was a lot for us. And that's really where my healing journey began. It's where my self-reclamation journey began and my spiritual journey began.
Wow. Yeah, I think that you've been through something that is so profound, and now it's led you to, it's really something incredible.
Thank you.
When you think back on that time in your life, what was the main thing that sort of kept pushing you forward during a time in life that I can only imagine, and I'm sure people listening would be like, that's a devastating thought to have those things happen. And there was joy in the middle. There was a wedding. But what was it within you that kind of propelled you forward during a time where there was a lot of grief?
Oh man. So I feel like in order to answer this question, I do need to explain some of the specifics and the things that happen. So if you're okay with that, I'm going to do that. So
Yeah.
after about 2 weeks after I lost my dad, and a month and 2 weeks after I lost my father-in-law, I found myself unemployed. And so it was at the height of the beginning of the pandemic. No one was hiring. It was really the perfect storm, I like to say, in order for me to do nothing but heal. And so I came across this book. I don't know if you've heard of it or if your listeners have heard of it, Signs, by Laura Lynn Jackson, The Medium. And so I started, I think I had bought that book actually, Rita, a year before my dad even got diagnosed. And I bought it for my husband or my boyfriend at the time, because his dad had been battling cancer for several years. And I thought, you know what, he may need this in the future. And I rediscovered the book when I was unemployed and living at home with my family, healing. And I had a moment of, oh my God, I think this book was for me. And so I started
Yeah.
reading it. And if you're not unfamiliar with the book is all about, it's not about Laura Lynn Jackson's journey. It's all about the people she's met through her mediumship business and their
Mhm.
experiences with signs. So it's basically like this book of proof that signs
Mhm.
exist. And it's like hundreds of stories of all of these people having lost, but then feeling so connected to their loved ones on the other side through signs. And so that I just dove headfirst into that. And I was just so, I remember thinking to myself, and I still think this way today, if I can't have my dad or my father in law with me, at least I can connect to them through signs. So
Mm.
I just made that my whole life. I really did. And I started receiving signs. And if you've ever received signs before from the other side specifically, it is like, I always say you can tell when you have a sign, when you get a sign, because it feels like a sign. It's like your heart
Mm.
opens. You're like, oh my God, I can't believe this is happening. This is
Ah.
so cool. And that I would say at the very beginning, that's what really led me through. And that brought me so much joy. And it brought my husband so much joy, my family. I started sharing my experiences with my in laws, and they started asking for signs. So it became this almost game and these really
Mm.
beautiful moments of joy and faith whenever we'd receive a sign, or the lights would be flat flickering when we're having dinner in the kitchen, like things like that that you just can't explain. That gave us life. It really did.
Wow, that's
Yeah.
amazing, and I haven't read that book, but it sounds incredible.
Oh, highly
Uh,
recommend.
yeah, I need to check
Yeah.
it out.
Yeah.
So for you, it sounds like the signs started to come when you opened to them. Does
Mhm.
that sound true?
Yeah, yeah, for sure. It was when I'll never forget. I think the first sign I asked for something small. I asked for the song that my dad sang to me at our wedding, and he sang at like his best friend's weddings is Chantilly Lace. And within 48 hours, my sister in law was like, "Hey, let's paint our nails," and it was a Chantilly Lace color.
Oh my gosh.
So that very first sign, I thought, okay, I'm gonna keep playing with this. And I would say that at first it was just a fun game for me to feel connected. But then receiving all those signs, like you said, it really opened me up to, okay, what else is there? If I'm
Mhm.
receiving signs from the other side, what if I start meditating? And in the book, she guides you through, you don't have to meditate to request a sign, but it does help to get
Mhm.
quiet and still and then send it out and connect through your thoughts. And so my meditation to receive signs turned into my meditation to just connect. My
Oh,
meditation. And then, when you're having these deep experiences with meditation, you realize what else is there. And so I started exploring energetics through meditation, and that made me want to start taking courses on the history of meditation, or courses like I dove deep into Mind Valley. Do you know Mind Valley?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I like I didn't have any money. I was getting unemployment, so I didn't have any money to purchase the courses.
Yep,
But I was doing all of the they have these like trailers or intro classes to get
yep.
people to then pay their money. So I would just do all the free classes on Mind Valley. And that's
Yep.
kind of how like the funnel began, I guess you could say.
I love that, and I love too how even when there wasn't the financial ability, there was a way. Like, you
Yeah.
found a way, you were like, "I'm gonna do this, this is interesting, like, I'll just do as many as I can for free." And I
Yeah.
think that's a huge lesson in itself, like, where there's always this, like, f for a lot, I think this feeling of, "I have to pay to move forward," and you don't. There's so much free resources online.
So much online. And even I remember what was it? I forget who the class was, this free mini training, but the mini trainings on Mind Valley are like 45 minutes. It's a full master class. That's what they
Yeah,
call master classes. And afterwards, what I could afford was a book. So I would then order the book afterwards. Instead of paying hundreds of dollars for the course, I'd
yep,
order the I think it's the Silva mind control method. Like
yeah,
I took his the master class on Mind Valley, and then purchased the book, which was $10. So
yeah.
if there, yeah, I believe that if you're guided towards these things, but you don't have the financial resources to lean in the way you want, there's always going to be another way. And that way will present itself to you also.
Yeah. Very, very true, and I agree, and great advice. Um, I wanna ask, like, who was Sabrina pre-2020? You went through all these changes, and, like, what did that really probably transformational hard time of your life I also went through a very disruptive time in my life where that changed me. And I think a lot of people who are probably listening can relate. They've either had that or at some point we all go through it.
Mm.
Who were you pre that and who are you now? So what did that journey offer you?
Mm. I pre 2020, Sabrina was in sales. Sabrina didn't like being told what to do. She always she still kind of doesn't. Um, but I would say pre 2020, I was really just following what I thought society wanted me to do.
Mm,
And everyone around me was just kind of following that path also. And I didn't really have huge vision for my life. I just had the things that I thought I was supposed to have, which is eventually find someone to get married to, get a house,
yeah.
have a stable job, and live close to family. And then, take 2 weeks of vacation, like all the standard things that we're told to have by society. And I just remember never really thinking big for myself.
Mm,
Um, and I was fine with that. I didn't know what I didn't know.
yeah.
And I would also say that pre 2020, I was I was reactive. I grew up reactive. I grew up, um, honestly, I grew up having a challenging relationship with my mind.
Mm,
And now I understand the ego. But back then I didn't know anything about that. Um, and so there was a lot of aspects of me that, although now I love these parts of myself, like the parts that were called intense or the parts I now understand are my shadow. But back then it was a little bit of a challenge for me emotionally to regulate myself. And I was just kind of always managing that while just following along what other people wanted me to do. So I would say that it really was, although I enjoyed my life and I was so blessed to have the life I did, it really was a life out of alignment. And I can see that
mm,
now. And I'm grateful for that, because to get back into alignment, I had to start from somewhere. Or
yeah.
to get here, I had to be that version of me. But everything is the complete opposite now, you know, except for that I, like, at my core, I am the same. But it's so fascinating how these things happen in your life. And then it's just a more healed, evolved, connected version of that old Sabrina.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's really beautiful. And one thing you said that I feel called to touch upon
Yeah.
was I think it's one so brave to use the word reactive and own that.
Mm,
And especially, there's such a negative connotation in society about especially kids who are reactive.
mm,
Um, and adults, but what I want to know from you, because you're someone who's seen both sides of it,
mhm.
what is someone who's reactive? Maybe kids, teenagers, like what are they is it that offers that peace based
What
on
off
what you've learned?
what offers the peace,
Yeah.
lessens the reactivity?
Yeah.
I can only speak from my personal experience. Um, at its foundation, I find self-awareness to be the gateway drug to to balance.
Yeah.
Um, I think it starts there, and just understanding why I'm reactive in the first place. As a kid, I realize now, with my self-awareness and practicing that, and self-reflection, looking within, I realize it had to do with how I grew up. It had to do with certain traumas in my life, experiences. You're right. There are so many. It's so easy to get angry at a little kid for reacting or having outbursts or big emotional experiences. But oftentimes, especially when they're kids, it's because they don't feel safe, right? In
Mm,
some capacity. So I think that self-awareness, in my experience, is like that gateway. But then for me, it's really just practicing connecting to myself and learning about my energy. And it's like, I guess that's a continuation of self-awareness, but like really getting to know how I move through the world,
mm,
and witnessing myself. And I use meditation to practice witnessing myself, but like witnessing myself in experiences that are triggering for me. And now I'm at the point where I can see the version of me getting triggered in a detached state. So there's the version of me that's experiencing the moment as is, and then it's almost like maybe it's my higher self, or maybe it's just, I don't know, even really know what to call it, but it's this bird's eye view of the situation in which the reactivity doesn't come about anymore. Like I'm triggered and I understand, I can see myself, oh, okay, this is just what's happening here. And we don't
Yeah.
have to respond. So I would say that self awareness and the practicing of connecting to yourself and witnessing yourself, whether it's through meditation or breath work or journaling, like whatever calls to you, just sitting in reflection is so beneficial to lessening that.
Yeah, I think that's huge. Thank you for sharing that. And I
Mm.
do know it is individual, but I think what you said about safety, that
Mm.
for me really was like, whoa, that feels so true. And
Yeah.
it's more, I asked this question too, like even on like a global scale of like, there's so many when you go out in public, you might not even feel safe because people our world is so reactive at the moment. Like we
Mhm.
live on a very reactive planet where people have outbursts. We see it online all the time. You know, you see things that are a little you're just like, "Whoa, this is a little bit odd what's going on in our planet." And I think what you just said about safety, like yes, it's true in children, but even we're seeing this a lot in adults at the moment.
Mhm.
I think it gives us a key to an answer that maybe we haven't seen. I There's something about that to me that feels like it's important. So thank you for shedding light on that.
Yeah, you're so, of course, and you're so right, Rita. There's, and I think it's always been that way. I mean, it's easy to see it within children, but just because you're you reach a certain age doesn't mean that you don't have those tendencies based on your own unique human experience. And I think, I went back to school for spiritual psychology, and it was more of a
Yeah,
program for my own healing. Um, but also you learned a lot of great tools and how to merge these beautiful principles of spiritual psychology with regular psych. It was just a great program. But one of my favorite things of the program was, and I'll never forget it, they spoke about, I can't forget if it was our teachers or if it was just someone who raised their hand in class, but
mhm,
um, the concept was if everyone walked around with one of those hello name tags on their shirt
yeah.
and just wrote down on it the reasons they are the way they are, maybe the shadow aspects of self, like, "Hi, I'm Sabrina,
Oh, yeah.
and I grew up in a challenging household," or like, "Hi, I'm Rita, and X, Y, and Z," and people just walked around with, like, that vulnerability in front of them, then it would be so much easier for us to not make an excuse for behavior, but of course there's some things that are inexcusable, but for your everyday things like honking at someone,
Yeah,
when you're
yeah.
in traffic, if you saw that, like, my wife is going through breast cancer treatment, like, it's just it was a really profound moment of me to be like, wow, we really have to be able to see through people's humanness and see what's actually going on inside. And I think that there's a lot of fear right now in the world, and people are acting out, and that's not to say that's an excuse, of course, um, but it does help us to be able, if we can see through that, it does help us to be able to help other people.
Yeah. I think I love what you just said. I think that would be an amazing practice if we
Yeah.
could orchestrate that on our planet.
Yeah.
Um, I I wanna, like, mention this random story because it came to mind. When I
Mm.
was in college, I was in a sorority, and we would do these bonding games. And one of them was where it would say, everyone remain silent, but they would say, if you've experienced this, like, you can step into the circle and, like, just know that you're seen for what you've been through.
Oh,
And
wow.
one of the things was, like, if you were abused by your parents, like, step into the circle. And, like, half the girls did.
Oh,
Um,
wow.
and if you've, you know, and by physically abused, that meant
Mhm.
if you've been sexually abused, step into the circle. And I saw at least 30 women step in, and I'm like, and this is when you're like 19 or 20, and you're
Mhm.
just starting to get an understanding of the world and what people have been through, or at least I was. I didn't fully understand the
Mhm.
scope of all of that. But anyways, it definitely makes you see people differently when you're like, "Oh, I see what you've survived," and, like, I'm actually just so in awe of you and inspired by you. So yeah, to add on to that, there's healing in, realizing even when we don't know that everyone has something.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. It's a really profound shift when you can remember that, or it can have profound changes in your life if you can remember that more often than not.
Yeah, I
Mm.
agree.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing about that. And
Mhm.
I want to learn now. So, how did your journey take a direction into breath work? Like, you've been killing it with breath work recently. I also want to hear a little bit about your last event because it looked, one, it
Oh.
looked so freaking fun, and two, it's amazing how quickly it's growing. So, yeah, I want to hear about your breath work story.
So, um, well, I found breath work in my healing journey within the year after losing my father-in-law and my dad. Um, by the end of that summer, just through meditation alone, I felt like I had completely transformed my relationship with grief.
Mm,
And that really freed up a lot of space. I don't believe you can get rid of grief, but I learned to live alongside it. And that freed up so much space for me to discover new things and to have faith in life and the flow of it. And I always say that life after that summer brought me breath work. So I
mm,
had been hearing about it so much, and breathwork is still fairly new in like the wellness space, although it's been used for thousands and thousands of years. But I would say in like the more modern space, people are just starting to hear about breathwork
yeah.
outside of the spiritual spaces. And so I was hearing about it, and I remember, and I will always shout out the OGs, the people I learned from Revelation Breathwork. And they came up on my social media, I think, and I thought to myself, I'm just going to finally take a class with them. And my first class with them was a longer experience. It was only 60 minutes, but it wasn't like now I'll have like intro classes and they're not as intense, so to speak. But with them, they held space so beautifully, and it was just a longer class. And I don't think I've actually ever spoken about this publicly, but I've told people here and there in conversation if it comes up that my very first class, I was at my mom's house and I was in my bedroom. I made my space all cozy. And after about, I would say, 30 minutes of breathing the technique, I felt my dad sit on my bed. And
Oh,
again, this is a year after he passed. I felt him sit on my bed and place his hand on my feet, just
ooh,
lovingly. And I didn't open my eyes because I knew he wouldn't be there. I was just so, I want to say deep, but it wasn't. I was in like the highest level of conscious. I was in my super conscious mind. And I knew that because I had had a whole, at that point, like 8 months of connecting with him in meditation and
mm,
signs. I knew he was around. So when I felt that, it was another level of life changing. It
oof.
was just, it was beautiful. And I remember crying, and I cried so much. But in breath work, oftentimes when you cry, it's not even emotional, it's just a release. And I got up from that session. I was like, I need to like I need to get certified. This is my next step. Like I have to do this. And ironically, but not ironically at all, because I know how life works,
Yeah.
they were like a week later, something like that. Within the month, they were enrolling for their certification. And I hopped right in there, and it was a weekend. Within like 5 weeks, I was certified.
Oh my
I
gosh.
think it was even less than that, but it was one of the most beautiful breathwork experiences I've ever had, ever.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
I had full chills as you were saying it. I think probably everyone listening can feel that. And I know you and I briefly talked about it once, but isn't someone holding your feet like a way to kind of ground you whenever you're going through an experience? Is that
Mhm.
true? Like there's that beautiful imagery of your dad, like, this is it. Like, I don't know, something there.
Yeah, you know what? It's so funny you say that, because in breathwork, I go up and I hold people's feet, and it's just kind of an intuitive thing. So that must be it. But I always feel like it's just a really nice, yeah, a nice way to ground people and connect their energy back to them. And yeah, I was definitely whatever it was, I was definitely being shown that he was around, he was supporting me, and
Mm.
that breathwork was it. Like it
Wow.
was it. Yeah.
That's really, really beautiful.
Oh, thank you, Rita.
And so you started to take it, and then how did you start to, turn it into now source method? Did you just start doing one-on-ones? How did it kind of catapult?
Yeah. So right after I got certified, now their certification looks a little bit different. It's several months, but this was an intensive, like long weekend.
Yeah.
So immediately after I got certified, I just was so excited to lead people through it. At that point, I think I was only certified to do one-on-ones. So I just, at that point, I had a social media platform, and I feel like that's a whole other story. We can get into it too. But at that, I missed that whole part. I can't believe it. But at that point, I was running this page called, I think at that point it was called the Grief Guide. So
Mm.
just a quick backtrack, right? During my summer of healing and realizing how much science and meditation, all these things were helping me heal,
Yeah.
I needed to pass that forward. I just felt like I'm not ready to put my face on a social media. So it was actually, I had like an avatar I made on
Mm.
Canva, and it wasn't even my full face. And it was called the Grief Guide. And I shared other people's stories with signs and talked about meditation for healing. And so that was kind of like the beginning of a business. So at that point in, I think it was 2021, was when I put it out there and I said, "Hey, I just got certified in this. Who's interested in some one on one sessions?" And
Yeah.
so that was when I really started practicing with other people, and realizing that it was in their first session, the same way that I had, it was an incredibly profound and healing experience for them. Then
Wow.
I think 2 months later, I got certified in groups, and I just hit the ground running. And that was when I started doing spiritual mentorship. I in 2021 I went back to school for that spiritual psychology program I had. So that year 2021 was the year that everything started coming together. So breathwork introduced itself to me. I got certified. I went back to school for my own healing, and then also to just learn how to hold some space in a more ethical way. Um, Although I don't believe that you necessarily need that. It was just the right path for me, and things just started falling into place. Um, and I'm trying to think of when source method came, but you were an integral part of that. You really were, Rita. I remember talking to you about it. I think so many people, oh, here it is. I remember now. So many people were having breakthroughs in breathwork, whether it
Mm.
was in a virtual class, drop in classes, people trying it for their first time. And so I thought to myself, and you and I think were working at the time
Yeah.
together. And I said, I will feel like I need to trademark my breathwork. You've got a bunch of people who have trademarked their own breathwork, but it's like their own spin on breathwork or whatever. And I thought, I need to do that. And so I'm just going to call it breakthrough breathwork. And
Mm.
I filed the information and I got a lawyer, and the name Breakthrough Breathwork was already taken. And I remember sitting down with you in a session and saying, "Oh, I don't know what to do, but I feel like it's bigger than that. I feel like it's not just about breathwork. Like we're going to trademark the name, but it's more than that." And I think you saw circle and meditation, and I had the word source came to me, and I don't remember how it was combined, source method. I think like it
Yeah.
was like a methodology, or like it was just not meant to be source method breathwork. Source method was supposed to be its own entity with
Mm.
a different path for breathwork, a different path for meditation, a different path for coaching. And yeah, it clicked. It was not taken by anyone. And so I grabbed it, and I knew, like, I remember just having full body chills and reaching out to you and saying, "Oh, you went through, went through."
Yes.
And then like everything has just kind of fallen into place since then too.
Wow. That's it's so amazing. I remember that, and it's
Yeah.
been so beautiful to watch, and honestly, I had full chills just hearing it again. Like there's
Um,
so much behind it. Um,
yeah.
what I guess I want to ask, and for anyone listening who's not familiar with breath work, like
Mm,
let's say this is their first intro to breath work,
mhm.
where should they start?
Hmm. So, breathwork is a general term. It refers to any specific pattern of breathing. You've got Wim Hof. Maybe people have heard of him. He's that
Mm.
crazy guy who will swim in the Arctic without
Yeah.
without his wetsuit. You've got the three-part breath that's at the core of source method, kind of similar to holotropic, which is another technique. But if you're brand new to breath work in general, which is any manipulation or rhythm of the breath, then I would recommend starting slow in the morning and at night. So
Mm.
I always love recommending this technique. It's called heart coherence technique. Joe
Mm.
Dispenza works with it, but also it's just a technique that's widely taught.
Yeah.
Um, And what you do is you breathe in for 5 counts through the nose and you exhale for 5 counts through the nose. And as you're inhaling and exhaling, you're placing all your focus on your heart. So as you
Mm.
inhale, you expand the heart for 5 seconds. And as you exhale, you bring the heart back to center, almost as if it's breathing with you. And if you do that for about 5 minutes in the morning, 5 minutes at night, within a week and a half, you will feel drastic shifts to your level of calm, your inner peace, connection to your body. You'll feel more grateful. Like it syncs up the brain waves between your heart, or your brain waves and your heart. So it generates that coherence, which is just a game changer for your state. And it's like, I'm using the word gateway drug a lot, but it really
Yeah.
is like opening to other types of breath work.
Wow, super
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah. So cool.
It's super cool. Um, do you feel like, and this is, I guess, a personal question because I know we can't answer it for everyone, but do you feel
Mhm.
like it also has helped to regulate your nervous system?
Oh, yes, for sure. Well, this specific breathing pattern, the 3-part breath, um, it it's a very active breathing technique. So it's not as passive as that 5 in for 5 in, 5 out. It's not as passive as box breathing, things of that nature. It's a little bit more active breath, and it activates your fight or flight, your fight or
Mm,
flight response in a very safe way. And what this technique does is it slowly opens your window of tolerance to feel and experience discomfort, but safe
mm,
discomfort. So it's essentially retraining your nervous system to be okay experiencing, or to be okay in everyday situations. You're like recalibrating yourself through this breath.
mm,
And yeah, and it's very healing. It's very potent, powerful for people who experience chronic anxiety, or who have or resonate with having unprocessed trauma, a dysregulated nervous system. You're slowly, very slowly, that's why you want to work with a trained practitioner, because it can be tough for the nervous system if you just bulldoze your way through it. But
yeah.
it's a really beautiful practice for opening your window of tolerance. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, I love that. So if you're interested and you're listening, I can personally say I've taken breathwork with Sabrina and I loved it. I had a profound experience. It's definitely a modality that I don't even want to call it a modality. It is a way of living that can really transform your life.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah. So thinking now back on, your journey and where you're headed, um, what do you think for someone who maybe is listening who's starting their spiritual journey or their entrepreneurial journey or both? What were the biggest lessons you would shift to someone if you could give it to them that you learned?
Mm. The first thing that came through was a joke, and it was don't and it was
I
so
love
this is
it.
a joke, everyone, but it was don't start a business while you're grieving. Or do if you're feeling called. It will be one of the most healing experiences of your life. Um, but in all seriousness, I the most important lesson that I would pass on is to listen to yourself over everyone.
Mm,
I think that this is a very common experience when you start entrepreneurship. You want to look to people who have more experience than you, or who are experiencing what you want to experience, have the business you want to have, the clients, all the things. And it can be very easy for you to just take what they say as the truth and the only way, because you so desperately want to change lives and you want to build a business for yourself and have financial security and all the reasons you start a business, the freedom, and you want that. And so you think, okay, well, if it worked for them, it may work for me. And
mm,
I definitely got caught up in that when I first started. And I think if you're in that, it's part of the journey. I
yeah.
think everything is for our learning and our growth. But yeah, I would definitely say to trust yourself always. If you're feeling like you don't want to post 3 times a week and you just want to do it once when you feel so inspired by it, and the energy of that will transfer.
Yeah.
It will touch the people that you want to impact. And so it's like, if anything, it's another way to say it is energy over everything.
Hmm.
Energy
I
over
love that.
everything. Yeah, huge.
So trust yourself and trust that your energy knows what to do, so don't force it.
Yeah, yeah. And practice also, I would say practice connecting to, or actually practice remaining connected to why you're doing what you're doing.
Hmm.
Because
Yeah.
at the end of the day, I'm sure a lot of people listening, they're in some, if you're an entrepreneur, you're probably in some space that's serving people, whether it's through your product or service.
Mhm.
And that desire to support or serve other people or help other people is always going to be greater than any doubt or fear or worry that you have.
Yeah. I think almost everyone who at least starts a spiritually related or human centered helping business, we
Hmm.
all start with a why. And
Hmm.
I think it's easy when the business part comes in to sometimes be like, well, how do you get this machine moving?
Yeah.
That's great advice because you have to keep coming back to that or it just gets very gray very fast.
Yeah. And I'll add this too. It gets very great very fast. I really feel like I'm emerging out of a year-long void. And I experienced a second dark night of the soul, but instead of it being due to my losses, it was, uh, I really believe parts of it had to do with losing myself a little bit in business.
Mhm.
Um, and so I kind of had to, like, I entered a season of a winter season, and I didn't do it willingly. I was kind of forced into it, and everything slowed down. Business slowed down, sales slowed down. Um, my connection to my own self worth and why I was doing it, like, I felt very disconnected and a lot of doubts, a lot of fear. But at the end of the day, I really believed in the mission of Source Method. I may not I may not still know what Source Method is going to become, but I really feel in my bones like it's going to be something that changes the lives of millions of people. And that connection to that why got me through this really hard transitional period. Um,
Yeah.
yeah. And it's like the light at the end of the tunnel.
So it sounds like for you, having a vision was what got you through the not knowing. Even
Yeah.
though you didn't know what it was going to be or how it was going to turn out, that's what it was. So for others, if let's say they're not clear on that, how would you suggest to them to tap into that future thing that they know is coming, but how do you feel into that? Does that make sense?
Mhm. Yeah, for sure. Um, I always recommend meditation, but I understand also meditation's not everybody meditates.
Mhm.
Um, but I really think connecting to, if you can't see the vision, connecting to the feeling that you wish to have. So for me, what I did was I would sit in meditation and I would just close my eyes or even going to bed at night. I would just visualize a future that I wanted. And it wasn't like 9 p.m. I got to visualize. It was
Yeah.
just, I felt called to. And I, not always, but from time to time, I'll go through phases where I just want to write and I'll
Yeah.
write down how I want to feel. So I think connecting, if you don't have an actual vision, a greater vision of maybe you in 10 years or whatever it is, 5 years, then connecting to whatever feeling you wish to have, I think will allow you to then get closer to seeing that vision, and that will be your North Star.
I agree with that. And
Yeah.
if you're listening and you're like feeling like I'm just still so disconnected, what I recommend to add to that is like go to
Mhm.
Pinterest and just find photos that make you happy. And whatever
Yeah.
like create a mood board for your future that you don't even know what it is, but you just know
Mhm.
that it makes you happy.
Yeah, and you know what else too on top of that?
Yeah.
These are more like tangible stuff too. Make a playlist for yourself.
Ah,
Make a
I love that.
music, yeah, music is so, music's such a incredible energy to work with that I think is so easy to forget. But like think about how you feel when you listen to your favorite song. So make a playlist of songs that make you feel so elated and happy and empowered and have faith, and listen to it on your walk to work or wherever. I feel like that could really help too.
I agree with that.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's so much with the senses. So
Mhm.
if you want if you're feeling lost and disconnected, and even if you're not, even if you're just ready for that next thing, this is the way that you can do it. That's fun, light, and exciting. It's kind of like
Mhm.
your living vision board to some degree,
Yeah.
even
Yeah.
without the vision.
Yeah, for sure. Love that, Rita.
Yeah, we're good teamwork.
Yeah, always.
So I know that you're starting to do these really amazing in-person events. What is your vision for that? Do you see yourself eventually, like if someone was listening and they want someone to come to their event to present about breathwork, um, do you see yourself doing that? Is this going to be in Boston? I'd love to know your vision for that so we can just put it out there and you never know who's listening.
Oh my god, you're so right. Yeah, so we kicked off in-person breathwork in Boston in April, and I did it kicking and screaming because I was so scared. Because I'd been virtual for so long, like, oh, how am I gonna remember what I'm saying? All these things. Um, yeah, and it's been a game changer, and there's really nothing like in person. So my big vision, well, right now I'm building a community in Boston. So if you're local to Boston, if you're in New Hampshire or Rhode Island, would want to drive, you're from the East Coast, Northeast, New England. Um, I'm just going to be doing in person throughout the whole year. Even when it's cold, we'll do it inside. But the big vision for in person, I mean, yeah, I definitely would love to be a presenter at your conference. I bring in person breathwork to corporations. If you are on a leadership team or you work in a corporation, doing offsites and actually bringing this work to CEOs and entrepreneurs. And I would love, oh my gosh, I had this vision the other day, actually, Rita, I think I told you this, of bringing breath work to, oh no, I told my husband this. I get you mixed up with Greg. I,
Biggest compliment
I
ever.
either told Rita or I told my husband.
Aw.
But I was like, oh, wouldn't it be so cool to bring breath work to companies that are changing the world? And I always say breath work, this type of breath work is a CEO's secret weapon. Like
Mm,
I honestly might trademark that because I say it so much. It's a CEO's secret weapon, meaning this type of breath work can allow you access to your unconscious mind and higher levels of consciousness where you have infinite resources available to you in the realms of creativity, inspiration, connection, new ideas, solving problems, like you name it, it lives here. And I'm pointing to my to my mind, the
yeah.
unconscious mind and superconscious mind. So I thought, oh my gosh, wouldn't it be so amazing to actually be able to provide the service to startups that are working on climate change, slowing
Mm,
down climate change, or to nonprofits who are doing good in the world, or massive corporations that are whatever, fighting racial injustice. Like it would just be so awesome to bring this type of breath work to those groups, help them access this level of creativity and inspiration that most people don't access if they're not practicing this
mm.
consistently, and then have them take action on whatever they receive. Like that's my big vision. That would be really cool.
I so see it, I so support it, and I can't wait for it to happen.
Yeah, thanks,
Um,
Rita.
you know, there was so many things or so many, like, highlights in what you just said. Like, I think you could totally write a whole novel about kicking and screaming my way into success. You use those words, and I'm like, I think that's so beautiful with, like, your Louis Vuittons on or whatever, and it just,
Yeah.
like, is so memorable because I think everyone kicks you know, we all have those moments where we're like, "No," but
Yeah.
that's where the leap is. So, if
Mhm.
you are feeling resistance in your life and you're listening, like, do it anyway. That's kind of the
Mhm.
moral of the story I got there is, like,
Mhm.
you're feeling called, um, you just gotta push through it. Like,
Yeah, yeah, push through it, and to add to that, just take one small step towards whatever the thing is. So you
yeah.
don't have to, like, for me, my launch party was the thing that really scared me, and it was the entry point into Boston, breathwork in Boston in person, and it was a huge deal. But instead of planning the whole thing in one day, I just reached out to one vendor. That's it, just
Mhm.
one vendor. And then that one little step, that one little email turned into three vendors, and it turned into, or like finding the venue and all the things. So that one small step too, it doesn't have to be this huge thing and you don't have to commit to it. but the one step will help you decide if it's worth it or not. And most likely it will make you feel excited and it'll kick off the momentum.
And also, I think before we publish this episode, you need to
Yeah.
trademark the CEO's secret.
Yeah.
I think you need to go do that because
I
I'm
know.
like, yes, that is a huge tagline, and I'm like, I can so see it.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. So there, there was so much good stuff there, and I think even companies that maybe aren't doing good for our world would benefit from this.
Yeah.
Because who knows? I think this is the stuff that makes people want to do good in our world. You
Yeah.
know, um,
Politicians, would love to bring this work to the government, decision
prisons,
makers, prisons. Yep, I've been thinking about that too. Mhm.
like probably anywhere. I think every human to some degree, deep down, I would hope, I don't know if this is true, but there's a willingness somewhere to learn and change and
Yeah.
um, if we can access it.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, Sabrina, this has been amazing.
Aw.
Before we conclude, is I want to ask, first of all, where can people connect with you? Because I think there's going to be so many people who are going to be huge fans of yours now. Is there
Aw.
anything else you want to share? Anything else that I might have missed that you want to touch upon while you're here?
Um, let's see. I think honestly it probably is a whole other deeper conversation too, talking about emotional mastery, I think,
Mm,
is a topic um that we can talk about forever, whether you're going through grief or you're going through challenges in business or you're just feeling overwhelmed by the world. Um, and I think the last, like I said, that's a whole other deep dive, but I think that at least for me with my journey, it's something that's always been kind of laced with all my experiences. It's like, how can I manage my emotions while starting a business, while doing things that scare me, while navigating a dark night? Like the grief journey has just been laced throughout every single thing I do. And I think I wanted to just say that if you're experiencing challenges in your life and emotional hardship in your life, and you feel in your bones that there's a future for you that you may not have all the details about yet, but you feel like it can be yours, or you feel connected to the faith that it can be yours, to just do whatever you can to remain connected to it and learn more about it.
mm,
Because the emotions are going to always go up and down throughout your journey. But I think it's just that idea of a North Star, even just having a sense that it's there, is something that will really help you navigate the emotional ups and downs that come with life, that come with just being alive. So I think I just want to say that because I feel like life isn't really easy right now with all the stuff going on in the world. And I'm sure some people can resonate.
yeah. Thank you for sharing that. I
Mhm.
think that that was very important, actually. And I think, yeah, probably everyone can resonate.
Mhm.
Um, there's so much truth to that. And also, I think I'll add to what you just said that when I first started my business, I thought everything had to be perfect for me to show up. Um,
Mhm.
I'd wait for days where I was in a good mood, or I'd wait for, you know, um, life to be good that week.
Mhm.
And, like what you said, things are up and down. Things can still be good even when things are down, or things can still
Yeah.
flourish when things are down.
Mhm.
And I think that's the beauty of life is that the trees are still going to grow even if we had a hard week. So just kind of keep that perspective too when you're navigating life and your journey.
I love that you just said that, Rita, because this morning I think I was just brushing my teeth and I got this vision of um rainfall,
Mm.
and the message that came through was there's still flowers in the rain.
Yeah.
Like there's still there's still I used to like go to this farm and walk with my dad and my dog. Like the farm's still beautiful even when it's snowing. The land is still beautiful even when it's rainy or inclement weather. Like there's still the beauty's still there, just maybe a little darker.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
I think you and I touched upon this briefly a little while ago about, connecting to animals that a lot
Mhm.
of us are afraid of, like spiders and like
Mhm.
finding the beauty in them. I had this thought too the other day where well, this was a few weeks ago when I was in Europe, where when it started to rain, I noticed how everyone would run, like, to try to get
Mhm.
inside, and I was like, "I'm not ever doing that again." Like,
Yeah.
ever. I mean,
Mhm.
if my hair is, like, just got done, maybe, but other than that,
Yeah.
no, because I'm like, "What am I running from?" I'm running from nature, from the natural rhythm of this planet.
Mhm.
Um, I don't know, it was just kinda funny to see the ways that we're taught to, like, not even be in cycle with the world around us, that
Yeah.
it can just have subtle shifts.
Yeah, yeah, for sure, and that goes back to the like, being able to witness yourself. Your immediate reaction was probably to run, and then you're able to, at this point, be able to see everything from a different perspective while it's happening at the same time, because there's this
Yeah.
attachment, and it's so beautiful when you get to that place. I mean, it's you get to sit in the rain.
Yeah,
You get to
and
dance in
just
the rain. Yeah.
laugh at it all and be like, "Cool, this is kind
Yeah.
of interesting."
Yeah, yeah, I love it. I love getting caught in the rain.
Even emotions, right? When you notice yourself getting triggered,
Mhm.
you're like sometimes you're like, "This is kind of funny." Like, "This is kind of
Yeah.
interesting, what's happening?"
Yeah,
It's
yeah, for sure. I think also like, one thing I say to Greg all the time, I'm actually so excited to teach our future kids how to be
Mhm.
able to not be afraid of their anger or their fear, and it can be I've even said to him, it can be this fun game, like, I'm excited to turn it into a game as opposed to something that you shy away from, um, that you contract from or by.
Oh, that's so beautiful. Yeah, I think it'll be so cool to see the next generation of kids because I think a
Mhm.
lot of our generation has been fortunate enough compared to older generations, I think, in a lot of ways to have more access to self-help and, meditation.
Yeah.
So I think it'll hopefully seep down into our next generation, and that's just a beautiful example of that.
I think it will.
Well, first of all, thank you so much, Sabrina, for being
Oh,
here. If
thank you.
someone here wants to connect with you, I actually know you're launching a new program called Mastery, which goes into more of this emotional depth. So, tell us a little bit about that and where else they can find you.
Yeah, so Mastery is going to be a 16-week, uh I'm not calling it a program, I'm calling it a journey. It just felt like it was more of this energetic river that you
Yeah.
jump into, and it takes you. There's pit stops weekly for self-connection and openness, but the whole purpose of this journey, it starts mid-September, ends the end of December. The whole purpose of it is to support you and really hold you in remaining consistent in the practices that help you elevate to your next level of being. So
Mm,
this experience, this journey is for those who feel like they're on the cusp of transformation, or you
mm.
resonate with having that feeling in your bones that there's your next iteration of you is just down the river. You're not that far from it. However, it's really, at least in my experience, it's the commitment and the consistency in staying connected to yourself, to life, to the energy around you, staying open to receiving information, insight, intuition, um, open, clear, and clearing your channel, clearing unconscious blocks, things like that in the body. And so that's what the journey is. It's remaining consistent, opening and clearing and connecting so that you can get to this next phase. It's like the next level of the video game.
Ooh.
So that's mastery, and I'm really excited for it. Um, and yeah, if you want to connect with me, my personal handle is it's Sabrina Palazzo, Palazzo. It's Sabrina Palazzo, and then also the brand Instagram source method is just source method breath on Instagram. And then you can go to sourcemethodbreath.com for all the things.
Thank you. And it'll also be in the show notes. So don't worry if you didn't catch it, you can click on it there. But Sabrina, it's been such a pleasure to have you. Yeah, I really loved having you today. I know our guests did as well. Thank you so much for coming on. And I'm excited to see where you and Source Method and Mastery are going to go.
Thank you so much, Rita. I appreciate you so much. And this was so fun.
It was
I had so much
so
fun.
fun.
Thank you so much for having me. And yeah, I just appreciate you so much.
Thank you. And thank you for listening. Namaste. And I hope you have the best day.